guys, Rachel, owner of CrossFit Chief, back with Dr. Danielle and Powered by Movement. And today I'm super excited because it's a common thing that happens with CrossFitters, and that's going to be elbow pain, right? Whether it's flexion, pulling, pressing, we have some type of elbow pain. So Dr. Danielle is going to talk to us about the difference between tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, and like how to recognize which area of pain is occurring and why, and then how to assess it, and then hopefully give us some exercises for that.
Yeah, so tennis elbow and golfer's elbow are named because they're very commonly experienced by tennis players and golfers. So what's the difference? So tennis elbow is on the outside or the lateral side of your elbow, okay? So usually we get that pain kind of at the top of your forearm, really up high. Golfer's elbow is going to be more on the inside right here, and that's more of a kind of wrist flexion base. So anything that's pulling up, you're going to get pain here. That's that golfer's elbow. With tennis elbow, we see when your wrist comes up, you get more pain out there. So the symptoms are very similar, they're just in different locations. It's usually a sharp pain right by your elbow, maybe when you're turning a doorknob, or when you're holding a frying pan, or reaching up for a coffee mug, turning your key in the car, things like that. And a common question we get is, why am I getting pain when I'm starting my car but not when I'm doing a pull-up? And that is a great question because it kind of leads into what is the cause of this pain in the first place. So when you're doing a pull-up, you're usually using your upper back, your shoulder, your biceps to kind of help do the pulling motion, and then you kick into your elbow wrist. So if you're experiencing pain with a doorknob where you're only using your wrist and your elbow, but not in a pull-up, that tells me, great, you're using your upper back in those pulling motions, but maybe not with turning that. But commonly we also see, especially in CrossFit, you're getting pain in the pull-up because you're pulling, like activating your wrist and your elbow before your upper back shoulder. And so the real problem behind both tennis and golfer's elbow is that we're trying to produce power from our wrist and forearm when we need that power to come from our upper back, our shoulders, and our trunk. And so we're going to dive into a few assessments and exercises to figure out if this is exactly what's going on and what you can do about it.
To add to that super quick, I think another common one is people when they do like a clean or they're like deadlifting, they're pulling early. So at that point, it's the same like out here, right?
Yes, and so that's typically that tennis elbow.
Yeah.
And absolutely, when we're pulling, instead of getting that initial pull from like our back and our hips, you see the kind of rip and grip where you extend your wrist and pull, and that puts a lot of torque at that elbow. So that's pretty common as well. So we'll dive into some assessments. Assessments of common movements, pulling movements where you may get tennis or golfer elbow like pain. We're going to start with tennis elbow. So very commonly we see that pain on the outside of your elbow with a clean or a snatch. And what we'll notice in those movements is that you are pulling the bar with your wrist and forearm, a lot of wrist extension, which is pulling those knuckles up, versus getting that pull from your hips, your upper back, and keeping your knuckles down. Okay, so one of the best things you can do is think about that movement in your clean, but we're going to talk about 2 exercises you can do to combat that. The first one, we'll just keep the PVC, is called a Cuban press. So it's just focusing on that movement with a neutral wrist position. When I say neutral, I want to see like a straight line from elbow to knuckle, okay? So Cuban press, you're going to do a high pull, you're going to rotate your arm up, and then you're going to press overhead. Perfect. And then you're going to go back, elbows down, rotate, and down. We want this to be pretty robotic, just to focus on what those movements would be in a snatch. What we don't want to see is on the pull up with your wrist, rip back with your wrist, and push. That's just all the power coming from wrist, elbow, and what we really want is that power coming from that upper back, those rotator cuff to rotate up, and then press with scapular muscles and back down. Okay?
I think another common one too, when we like do in class, you'll do it with 2.5s,
Yeah.
4 or 5 pound plates, right?
Yeah.
So the same thing, keeping that same component of up versus flicking.
Yes, and actually for that reason, a plate is a great tool because you can see the plate pop up if you do it the wrong way versus like having the plate follow your hands. Yeah, like that's not what we want to see. We want to see that neutral wrist and get those upper back shoulder working. Perfect. So that's one exercise you can do. Another one, and this one is great for pain relief as well, is grab a box, grab a light dumbbell. You can always go heavier, but this gets pretty challenging pretty quick. And what you're going to do is hold the dumbbell Just an isometric hold with your palm facing down and same goal. So straight line from knuckles to elbow. So if your elbow is further forward, it's gonna be harder. If you're back more, it's gonna be a little bit easier. And Rachel's demonstrating what we don't wanna see, which is that wrist extension. That's just cranking on those extensor muscles that come up to that elbow where you get pain. So we really want neutral wrist, here, hold. The goal here is hold 45 seconds. We're just working on building endurance in those wrist extensors in a neutral position. So that's why I said start light. This gets heavy really fast. Okay, that one is a great exercise to do for immediate pain relief too. So if you're struggling in a workout and you're like, it's just hurting, but I think I can do it, pop down, do a set of this, and then try that movement again.
So would you recommend like 2 sets of 10 like as a warm-up if somebody's having that kind of common pain as a pre-warm-up for them?
Yeah, this I want like longer holds. So 45 to 60 second holds, 2 to 3 rounds. For the Cuban press, I would say 8 to 12 reps, about 2 rounds. And those are great warm-ups for you. Diving into golfer's elbow, which is pain kind of on the inside of your elbow, typically when we're pulling something close to us or maybe like carrying a heavy grocery bag, turning a doorknob. Why does that happen? So usually we see a lot of force we're trying to create from our wrist and forearm in the sense of you're pulling like this. So if you're doing, say, a pull-up and we want to see you pull from your upper back, your lats, use your shoulders to stabilize, but you might be creating torque from your wrist and forearm, see that flex position, that can kind of pull right down to that elbow where you're getting your pain. So we're going to go through 2 exercises that might help you get rid of that. So the first one we're going to do is an isometric dumbbell hold. Similar to if you've been following along to our tennis elbow, but the opposite direction. So same thing, hold, wrist neutral, straight line, elbow to fingers, palm up, because what you're going to want to do is curl that wrist upwards into those flexors, but we really want you to get in that neutral position. This is just building endurance in the wrist neutral, which will help you hold wrist neutral when we're doing things like pull-ups or any sort of, bent over row, things like that. And so you're gonna wanna hold this position for 45 seconds. Build to a weight that's challenging but doable and do about 2 to 3 sets. It's a great pain reliever and a good warm-up. The other thing we wanna work on, as we're talking about pull-ups is a scat pull. So you're gonna find a pull-up bar, jump up for me, and we want you to stay in this neutral position. I'm gonna move your hair in front of you, and use your lats to pull into the scat pull. So notice how Rachel's doing a really good job of her lats moving and relax, and you see her wrist staying neutral. She is not, and relax, try bend your elbows. She's not bending her elbows, creating torque like that. That's where you're gonna feel that pain. You wanna keep your elbows straight, wrist neutral, pull on the lats, keeping that good hollow body, and relax. Down. So that was a really good demonstration. A lot of us will start the pull up like this because you have really strong arms, but maybe your back's not catching up, but over time that puts a little too much stress on your elbow.
Let's say that the client is doing like the hang and just them even hanging potentially irritates them. We probably want to nix that or...
Yeah, so sometimes we get to a place because this tendon has been irritated over time, you have a really low threshold of irritability. What I mean by that is one movement can flare up your symptoms really quickly, and a hang could be that if it's just kind of tired of doing that. So what I would say is not remove the movement overall, but you can support your feet in a hang and get enough support that you can start working on that scat pull and neutral without pain. So offload your body weight. So yeah, we can put your feet on a box. I think the box should be, yeah, perfect. And then she's just gonna like toe touch and then do the pull. And you can push as much or as little through your feet until you don't have pain. And then from there you can take one foot off and then slowly progress back to hanging. That's what I would do. Cool. Okay, so those are a few things you can do if you are experiencing tennis or golfer's elbow. We just want to reiterate that the source of the problem is at your elbow. So that's where the pain is coming from. But the cause of your problem is typically that our shoulders, upper back, trunk are not helping create power and stabilize our arms from the top down. So if you have time and you want to make this pain go away, we would say do the exercises we went over. With the isometric holds, we are looking for 45 to 60 seconds, 2 to 3 rounds. And with the Cuban press and the scat pulls, 8 to 12 reps, 2 rounds. They work great as a warm-up or as a little bit of independent rehab to try to get rid of this pain. If you go through these things and you're working with your coaches in class to modify your movement, make sure everything looks good and you're still having pain, we are happy to help you dive into a full evaluation and figure out exactly what's going on.